As U.S. President Donald Trump orders strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, the Middle East teeters on the edge of full-scale war. Trump claims the bombings totally obliterated Iran's program. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu praises the strikes as historic. Iran has vowed everlasting consequences, calling the attack a dangerous war, and is saying that Iran reserves all options to defend its sovereignty, interests, and people. The international community is now scrambling to contain the fallout. Will Iran retaliate militarily or shift towards diplomacy? Could this be the start of a regional escalation? And how is the world reacting to America's role in this war? Welcome to Think Tank.
Our world is becoming unhinged.
Now, according to the New York Times, U.S. President Donald Trump has thrust the United States directly into Israel-Iran war by ordering coordinated airstrikes on 3 major Iranian nuclear sites, including Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. Trump said the facilities were totally obliterated and wanted Tehran to accept peace or face even more devastating attacks. The operation involved B-2 bombers dropped 6 bunker-busting bombs and cruise missiles launched from submarines, while no immediate proof was presented of the extent of the damage. Trump framed the strike as a necessary step to halt Iran's nuclear ambitions and destroy of its nuclear enrichment capacity. Flanked by Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Trump warned Iran's leaders of tragedy far greater if they retaliate. According to the New York Times, though he long campaigned against U.S. involvement in foreign wars, Trump now faces backlash from within his own party and from Congress for bypassing legislative approval. Iran has vowed a response, and fears are mounting that further retaliation could trigger a cycle of escalation. The strikes mark a significant shift in Trump's stance and reflect a deepening alignment with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Benjamin Netanyahu praised Trump's decision. Now, Washington braces for Iranian retaliation, raising concerns over the potential for regional war. Iranian Foreign Minister Bashar Araghchi said his country reserves all options to defend its security, adding that Tehran could not return to diplomacy while under attack by Israel and the United States. Speaking in Istanbul, Araghchi said Tehran was weighing its options for retaliation and would consider diplomacy only after carrying out its response to U.S. strikes on nuclear sites. The Iranian foreign minister said he would fly to Russia, with whom Iran has a strategic partnership, and consult with President Vladimir Putin on Monday. After the U.S. attacked Iran's main nuclear sites in strikes overnight with massive bunker-busting bomb, Tehran responded with a volley of missiles at Israel that destroyed buildings in its commercial hub, Tel Aviv. Tehran's options of retaliation may include targeting U.S. bases or close the Strait of Hormuz, where a quarter of the world's oil shipments pass through.
With the genocidal Israeli regime has once again revealed the extent.
For more analysis, we're joined from Cairo by Mr. Mohammed Osmani, International Relations Specialist, and Mr. Mohammed Tamawi, Political Economy and International Relations Professor. Good afternoon to you both, gentlemen, and welcome to Think Tank. Let me here start with Mr. Al-Tamawi. And Trump said that Iran's nuclear facilities have been completely and totally obliterated, making the strike a spectacular military success. While Iran says that it transferred enrichment uranium in Fordo to another location. Now, how do you interpret the success of strikes to achieve its intended goals?
Greetings to you and your viewers and your distinguished guest. In the outset, I read the American stance, specifically President Trump's, as he witnesses that it witnessed some sort of American deception. There is an in-depth view that will see that the nature of the strategic relation in the Middle East that has manifested by double standard. One hand is shaking hands and the other hand is fighting. And this would, as stated by Trump, is demanding peace, but complicated the matter by striking the nuclear facilities in Tanz and Isfahan and Fordo. That would expose as a part of a calculated political strategy that tends to impose a real strategy. From hence, to prevent Iran to retaliate and to force it to return in the negotiation table out of options. The United States is gambling Iran or fighting Iran under the pretext of the acquiring nuclear weapons, but on the other hand, supporting Israel that has nuclear facilities that reflects a legal breach that affirms that Washington did not move for protecting the world stability, but to support its allies on the account of the national security, and promoting that Israeli strikes as a defending itself, but the strike serves Trump's agenda to show himself as a man of a decisive man of the foreign policy, but this cannot be measured equally. It is some sort of a great selection through which issues using the international cause instrument upon its interests. Such a decision lies not only on the substandard or the double standardization, but without bearing the responsibility about the ramifications of their deeds that strengthen the idea of the logic of strength and not the negotiation.
Right. Getting back to Mr. Osman, Mr. Tamawi, you really raised a very important point, which is addressing the nuclear capabilities of Israel as well as that of Iran. We'll get to that. Mr. Osman, let me ask you now. Western countries like Britain are urging diplomacy. Do you see any international momentum forming a coordinated de-escalation, particularly after Iran warned that this move will have everlasting consequences?
Thank you for having me, Mona. Greetings to you, to your guest, and to your dear audience. So now we are in a very strange predicament as things stand, Mona, to be honest. Yesterday, a couple of days ago, we see President Trump giving Iran a 2-week ultimatum to reach a deal and to achieve a breakthrough in negotiations. However, this ultimatum only manages to last for 2 days instead of 2 weeks, which means that, as Mr. Tamawi said, this is a grand scheme of strategic deception predicated by both Israel and the United States for the second time in less than a month, I guess, against the Iranians and against the world even, but this time with the complete collusion of the European powers, namely Britain, Germany, and even France. even when they were negotiating with the Iranians in Geneva, it was seemingly a part of the grand scheme, because all of these European countries supported the Israeli aggression, war of aggression against Iran, and now they embrace and condone the American aggression against Iran as well, a sovereign nation. And even Britain went as far as to warn Iran that if you retaliate against the United States, you will be targeting NATO countries, and then we will have to invoke the NATO Charter and we will have to attack you to defend the United States. This is how farcical things have become, Mona, unfortunately. And President Trump yesterday, in his Truth Social post, called upon the Iranians after destroying the backbone of their nuclear program, telling them now it's time for peace, come back for talks. So negotiate about what? So let's imagine, Mona, if I have a problem with these beautiful glasses you're wearing, and I say that they are radioactive and they might release laser beams that will incinerate me and incinerate humanity because I am a mentally retarded person. So you will tell me, because I'm powerful, that okay, let's negotiate. So we negotiate, and in the midst of the negotiation, I take away these glasses and I break them to pieces. And then I'll tell you, let's negotiate. What are we going to negotiate about? You have already destroyed the subject of the negotiation. What they are asking is basically guarantees from Iran of absolute capitulation, so that Iran would not respond against the United States. This is the American calculus, an imperialist, neo-colonialist calculus that is transpiring before us as we speak. So I do not see that any of the diplomatic maneuvers right now by the West will help de-escalate the situation in the near future. However, I do believe that the Iranians, so far, their escalation is measured. They are not eager to enter into an open conflict with the United States at this point, because this would be tantamount to suicide. It seems so far, the indications are saying that the Iranians are going to escalate their attacks on Israel and maintain this war exclusively between them and Israel for the time being. However, they will not retaliate, in my opinion, substantially against US targets, at least at this point. However, we cannot dismiss or disqualify the very strong possibility that they might actually do that. Today, the Iranian parliament has called upon the government to shutter the Straits of Hormuz. So it seems now that they are trying to point out to the Americans and to the West in general, threaten them with the prospects of severing the 20 to 25% of the world's supply of oil. Over 50% of Europe's oil comes from the Straits, through the Straits of Hormuz. So Iran is trying to play its cards. However, if they overplay them, or if they take any rash decisions in terms of retaliating against the Americans, this will give the United States a pretext to continue its own war. And of course, let's be realistic, they will destroy Iran if this actually happens, and they do have the capabilities. And the US did demonstrate by taking out Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan yesterday in this it was an impressive operation, yet terrifying at the same time. And I think that the message from it was not only for the Iranians, but also for all of the potential foes and adversaries of the United States. The United States was displaying a supreme show of force yesterday to the Chinese, to the Russians, to every other country in the region, showing them that the US does have the, yes.
Lots of message came out of this strike indeed.
Everyone.
Lots of message, particularly that the US has already sent half of its capabilities, and that's for the very first time in the US history. Let me go to to Dr. Tamawi. And Dr. Tamawi, how does this escalation shift the balance of power between Iran and Israel in the regional or within the regional context?
within region. Let me say that we are witnessing a geopolitical storm that is exaggerated. The region is witnessing an unprecedented phase of tension. I wish to praise Dr. Osman's speech of the headline that of the hot the headline that is about to explode. It is not just a militarily operation, but in a very substantial shift of the rules of engagement in the region and an expression of the strategy of America against Iran and Washington throughout the past decade that has a policy of contains that's been moved to the logic of the preventive blow that open and a very dangerous gates throughout arenas by hitting Titan and Isfahan and Fudu that has a message that the sovereignty and technology centers are exposed if the major power decided to escalate, and even Iran did not show that its sovereignty was collapsed, but in a state of retaliation, through which attempting to maintain or to preserve their options without dragging into irrational retaliation. This matter means that it's running the conflict through a very complicated calculus and also its position in the potential settlement. The most notably that the strike never changes in the Iranian nuclear program in a way that Washington perceives. Yes, there is some sort of a partial disruption, but the program as a strategic idea is still present, and Iran never abandon its nuclear program, as it is one of the main strengths of bargains on the international negotiation table, which make it as a party that cannot be ignored in any formulation of the Middle East. Iran is not in a full position of negotiation along with Israel, and this. And through the numbers that came out of within Israel, around 30,000 was damaged by requesting for compensation. That indicates the idea of war has exceeded the calculus of deterrence. In addition to the militarily block of or the military strikes against Iran, and the political rhetoric that promotes of an absolute power had become crippled to pay the real price of the real face-off. And if we read the Israeli landscape through, we'll find the degradation of the people who wish to go to the psychological support that exceeded 80%, which is a very dangerous indicator within the Israeli community. It's not only just a matter of horror, but it exposes the shaken trust in the state, and even in area that used to be the most fortified areas, big concern and panic became too fast, along with the repeated threats against the residential area and the faces of discriminations of the Israeli violence. And on the other hand, in light of the future of the conflict, threatened the maritime navigation through Hormuz Strait that transport more than 20% of the world oil that makes the political landscape is more vulnerable. Iran announced today that may resort to such an option by the closure of the strait, or hinting to that would lead to the high price of the oil, as it happened.
Yes,
in fact,
it's a very contentious. It's a very contentious matter indeed, this issue of the Hormuz Strait. Let me here go to Ms. Osman. And Ms. Osman, Trump was highly criticized within his own close circle of Republicans, politicians, for considering this strike on Iran, and they say that it is against his America First policy. Now, how do you expect Trump's base, especially the America First faction, to respond to his involvement in what Mr. J.D. Vance today said would be a long or an open-end war?
It seems that Trump, in essence, has betrayed his MAGA base by going through with his intervention on the side of Israel. And just let me make something clear, Mona. This is the first time in history the United States intervenes directly in a war on the side of Israel. This has never happened before since the creation of Israel in 1948. So this is a landmark that we should look upon with a lot of attention, I believe. So what President Trump has done is that he betrayed, in my opinion, his MAGA base. The MAGA base, or the idea of MAGA, Make America Great Again, and the concept of America First, which it is built upon, it is based on a few pillars. And one of those pillars is not getting entangled once more in any foreign wars, especially not a war in the Middle East, where the United States has a very bad record in this regard, and where the United States has sustained a lot of losses economically, has lost thousands of troops. So that's not really something that is very appealing to the American public. So the MAGA base was elected Trump on a platform that constituted many things, being tough on immigration, securing, being tough on trade, and not getting entangled on wars. So now Trump is betraying that and getting entangled in what could possibly be the biggest war in the history of the Middle East if it escalates, by the way things are, which would make wars like Iraq or Afghanistan or even Libya pale in comparison if this continues to escalate. So they feel betrayed. The American public in general is overwhelmingly against this war. About over 60% of Americans in opinion polls have said that they are against fighting this war on behalf of Israel or on the side of Israel. Only 16% of the American public approved of this. So it doesn't seem that President Trump took the opinion of his constituency into account. Even prominent supporters of President Trump, his former advisor, Steve Bannon, and one of the ideologues of the populist far right in the United States, someone like Tucker Carlson, the famous TV presenter who has millions of followers and one of the symbols of the MAGA movements, and others, Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the strongest congresswomen who was supportive of Trump. All of those people are staunchly against getting entangled in this war. And even members of the Trump administration like J.D. Vance, whom you mentioned, and even Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, they have, behind closed doors, they have expressed their concerns about the possibility of going to war in the Middle East again, because they are against it and they campaigned against it. Tulsi Gabbard, his own director of national intelligence, a war veteran and a former army officer and a former member of Congress and a Democrat turned Republican and a very staunch and loyal Trump supporter, back in March, said that we do not possess any evidence that the United States, that Iran, just let me finish this point, that Iran is developing or pursuing nuclear weapons at this point. And President Trump responded right before launching this war, said, I don't care what she said, she's wrong. She's your own pick. She's your own appointee. What are you talking about? So now I think that Trump will have to face a domestic backlash, especially if Iran retaliates and the United States get dragged full time into this war. I think Trump will have a very big domestic problem at his hands.
Right. Back to you, Dr. Tamawi, and briefly, please. Iran has requested an emergency UN meeting, while Secretary General Antonio Guterres criticizing the attack. European states, or like Germany, like France, and also the UK called on Iran to return to the negotiating table. How do you assess the international response to the US attacks, and do you think there will be an outcome out of that?
With respect to Iran's demand of holding an emergency meeting of UN Security Council, it is a symbolic political step, but would prevent the indulgent region into face of a confrontation and would not prevent Washington to execute its strategic goals. UN Security Council will be a space of the political clash between the American veto and China and Russia. Means not a real power to take in a Biden resolution, but Iran pursues to change itself from an accused nuclear respect into a victim of aggression.
Excuse me, Mr. Tamawi, but if you don't mind, would you make it more brief to the end, because we're running out of time. So if you have another point, please state it, but very quickly.
Yes. If Iran loses this war, the result was going to be an affrontation of a regional conflict, but Zionist Germany in the Middle East, and to reshape the region according the standards of exclusion and conflict. The battle would exceed Iran and Tel Aviv into existential project based on dominance by force and preventing Iran of the minimum options. So Iran's defeat will be read as it is a declaration of any ambitions and to come out of the Israeli-American umbrella and fall into the idea.
Right, very clear, Mr. Tamawi, very clear. Unfortunately, my time is out and I have to end it here. Mr. Mohammed Tamawi, Political Economy and International Relations Professor, and Mr. Mohammed Osman, International Relations Specialist. We thank you so much for your valuable, very valuable insights here. And I guess that brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank, which always unveils the complexities of our changing world. Many thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more coming up on Qnews.